Chums, when you see stories like this, there's always a bigger story behind that story. You know the sort of thing I mean. And recently, over the last few days, politics has become even more grubby, if that were possible. You know what I'm saying? What you have is a bunch of people that have been outed as liars, people getting fired, manoeuvred, all sorts of things. And then, as I pointed out in a recent video, suddenly the current British Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Sir Keir Starmer, decides, of course, to use a child to make sure that deflects away from his negative press. I told you the same thing of where he was trying to angle an invitation to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, carols at Christmas concert. Attach yourself to somebody popular and just hopefully, well, maybe hopefully, things won't look as bad for you. This particular story I just wanted to give you some background to, simply because, unlike many, I know the truth. As ever, let me explain. Morning chums, lovely to see you. Thank you so much as ever for joining me today. Isn't this nice, this beautiful window display here? Yes, very seasonal, isn't it? Have you got your tree up yet? Have you got decorated? Is it too early? You know my thoughts. I sort of think, really, yes, I'm a bit Alistair Sims, Scrooge, you know. I think a couple of days before suffices. Yeah, because if you've got a real tree, you've got all those needles for weeks, haven't you, afterwards? Have you still, let me know, do you still have a real tree? Or do you not bother? Have you gone plastic? Or is it simply a festive tree? Not a Christmas tree. Oh, that's controversial, isn't it? Let's not go there as ever. It's a little bit like this particular story that has really engulfed, many people say, the political landscape really over the last couple of days. And it's absolutely nonsensical because, you see, here's the thing. What you've got to do when you see stories like this, and it's very easy to decide exactly how this pans out. You see, a couple of weeks ago now, 2 weeks ago, this particular gentleman sat down with BBC Newsnight to basically claim 50 plus years ago, the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, may have said a few hurty words, right? They're kids, 11 years old kids. Now remember, this is a boys' boarding school. Very notorious, of course, for having to stand up for yourself and all that sort of stuff. Now, here's the thing. Why has this story suddenly re-emerged? Well, again, if you look at this story, you'll see that this person sat down with the BBC. Now, at this point, when I contacted the BBC, I asked the burning question, was this guest paid? The BBC declined to comment. So there's your first strike, right? Because suddenly one might ask, well, were they paid? Do not forget also that this particular individual has also worked for the BBC very lucratively in the past. Now, a couple of days later, here's the deal. Suddenly they pop up again, this time over on the ailing breakfast show Good Morning Britain. And that's hosted by none other than a former Labour minister and the husband of course, the former Home Secretary until she was shifted for failing to do the job, Yvette Cooper. You get the picture again. Now, this is where this gets even more complicated because, as we're talking, of course, about the Reform MP, the boss of Reform, Nigel Farage. Now, I can tell you, I've known Nigel for probably now over 12, 13 years. From, in fact, the very first time he decided to appear on TV. Now, I have nothing attached to this story other than what I can do is share with you my personal experiences. Nigel Farage came to the studio during any time of the day and night, sometimes at 2 a.m. in the morning to appear on American television, sometimes as early as 6 a.m. The person that they're describing on these particular interviews is not the person that I know and who would be the same. This is 50 years down the line. Now, Nigel is, sort of boisterous, great fun, full of life, but the one thing Nigel Farage is not is a racist. He got on with every creed and colour, of which we have many in the studio. He was very engaging, very caring, often brought in fruit from his local farm, did things like that. This is not a person who was looking to curry favour. He didn't need to. The studio was being paid for by the channels. But whenever you sat down with him, as I often did on a daily basis for a cup of tea, or we were just chatting away about normal things, not always politics, it could be about history, it could be about a film that we'd seen. He was very big on things like the Dam Busters, anything British, very patriotic. And I'm not bigging him up, this is the reality. I never once heard him be rude, nasty, or indeed make any slight against anybody. The reason why I'm highlighting this is the question that you have to ask. And again, I put a call into Good Morning Britain over on ITV. Was this guest paid? You see, normally ITV pay anywhere between £2,000 and £5,000 per guest if they feel they can bring in an audience. So you see how this works. This was particularly brought out on a week where the Labour Party are genuinely suffering. And this is because of their own blatant lies. So the question I would put out to you and anybody out there watching is simply this. All you've got to do in these things is follow the money. And remember, by having a former Labour MP as a host, who really should not be sat down alongside Susanna Reid on a discussion of this level, well, that's the level that the mainstream media have decided to treat you to. As I said, I've known Nigel a long time. We don't see each other as much because he's a busy man now, but consequently, whenever I do, he's always warm, kind and engaging. But more importantly, not all MPs are like that, trust me. And I see them all on a daily basis. So if somebody were to attack him and of course say, well, he's this, you're talking about something 50 years ago. Now, can anybody truly remember anything that they said to somebody at school 50 years ago? Truly, in my opinion, this is nothing more than a political hit job. But it's up to you to decide whether you want to believe the mainstream media or in fact somebody who's spent hours over many years talking, chatting and relaxing with someone who would slip up in that period. But they never did because they're not like that. And that's just my opinion. I'm not out here to protect him. I'm here to tell you the truth as I see it. Neil Sean in the very heart of the United